you think people imagine when they picture the Cecil Hotel?
Is there a room here that maybe somebody hasn't died in? I never got used to that. Never got used to that.
Throughout its history, the Hotel Cecil has always had a dark persona.
People call it Hotel Death.
This was a place where serial killers let their hair down, like Richard Ramirez, who would come back covered in blood, and no one's got a problem with that.
A hotel with a notorious past is the site of another bizarre case.
Elisa Lam from Vancouver, Canada, is missing.
The big unanswered question is, where is she?
The last footage that we have of her was inside the elevator. That's where the case starts to go askew.
She kept looking outside the door.
Why is the elevator not going anywhere? Is someone keeping her here?
Her hand movements are very strange and erratic.
Like she's conjuring a spirit.
It makes people wonder, is there something evil going on here? It just blew up.
In the web sleuth community, it created this feeding frenzy. If it's a murder, then you need a murderer.
You really don't have the full story.
She was running around trying to save her own life.
Bad things keep happening here over and over again.
This hotel was hiding something.
I would have never thought what was about to happen could happen.
This is the latest chapter in a dark history for the Cecil Hotel.
Hello, and welcome to the Cinemondo podcast with Kathy, Mark, and Burk, talking about movies, horror, sci-fi, unusual, unknown, forgotten, underappreciated, documentary. Always interesting. Who is that?
For me, it's him. This way.
It is documentary filmmaker Joe Berlinger. Yay!
Hey, Joe.
Welcome,
hey.
Joe.
Coming back to Cinemondo podcast once again.
Nice to see you guys.
Good to see you too, as always.
It wouldn't be a premiere without a chat with my old friends.
That's right. Needed to be done, and here it is.
So this time we're talking about a new Netflix documentary that you're involved with about a building that I'm sort of familiar with. It's sort of almost in my neighborhood.
Yeah,
the Cecil Hotel.
Yeah, we did a 4-part doc series that premiered, I guess, last Wednesday. Today is Sunday, the 21st. Are we allowed to date ourselves?
Yeah,
sure.
That's fine.
It premiered on premiere on Wednesday or the week? No. What am I talking about? Premiered February 10th, so it's been out for 10 days. Oh, that's right.
I watched it the minute it came out, so it seems like a while ago.
It's one you can watch. You watch the first episode, then you go next, watch the second one, watch the third. You can't watch it, you just watch it right in a row. It's so compelling. That's just my side review. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, no, it seems to have hit a nerve. It's definitely not underappreciated, which is one of your categories. It seems to be appreciated. Although there's been a bunch of snarky reviews, like people who have to know better and tell you why everyone else is wrong. I mean, the social chatter has been incredible. Like if you go on Twitter or whatever, just tens of thousands of people commenting on it, largely positively around the world. But then if you go on Rotten Tomatoes, these snarky critics who just, I don't know what it is. I mean, obviously people don't have to love my work. And people are entitled to an opinion. And I generally find the things that are in the 50s and 60s on Rotten Tomato more interesting because if all the reviews are just kind of mediocre, then the project has a good chance of being mediocre. But if there's like incredibly great reviews where it says it's like really smart and like reviews where it says it's the biggest piece of garbage ever created, those two, that duality, which often happens with my stuff, then to me that feels like, okay, well, you can't please everybody, but the people who love it really love it and get it.
Why do you think that is? Is it because it's just not cool to like the documentary crime genre and they're trying to lump you in with just the trashy true crime as opposed to doing sort of social justice kind of filmmaking that you usually do? Or what do you think?
I'm going to turn my notifications off. Apologize. I should have done that. I mean, I think that, look, I know this may sound arrogant. I don't mean it to be arrogant at all, but to me, the proof's in the pudding. It's, it's in the top 10. Actually, it was #1 for Netflix around the world. A couple of markets where it wasn't, but generally it was #1 for the first week and a half of release in the vast majority of markets, including US, Canada, and UK, so English speaking world. More people have reached out to me about this one than in a really long time. Just people from all walks of life, people I haven't talked to in ages. So people are enjoying it, but then you read the reviews and they think it's the most, superficial, disrespectful thing. And yeah, disrespectful to victims. It's just the worst of the true. It's like, wait, the whole point is I was dissecting the true crime genre, making a comment.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's what I liked about it.
They didn't finish watching it. Sounds like they watched the first two.
Or why is it? Or they have, it was trending on Twitter, so the critics who want to have, click-throughs to them have to go against the grain and show why people shouldn't be liking it. I don't know what it is. It's weird. You guys have known me for a very long time, and have been part of my work, subjects of my work in Paradise Lost 2, for people who don't quite know that connection. You were in Paradise Lost 2. You started the Free the West Memphis Three support group. So we've been tethered in a very nice way for 3 decades. So you've seen the arc of my work. The strange thing to me is I actually, I used to get glowing reviews and small audiences, relatively speaking.
Yep.
Now I get huge audiences and shitty reviews. But my work really hasn't changed, I don't think. Of course, the subjects change. And of course, I try little techniques. But the things that animate me as a filmmaker, the subjects I take on, the social justice aspect of it, the exploding of stereotypes, that, all of my work, there is a very, it does fall into 2 buckets, admittedly. I jokingly say, I either do murder or music, so like, but murder is more like, wrongful conviction, over sentencing in prison populations, focusing on marginalized communities that get shafted by the system. So it's not just murder, but I jokingly say murder and music, and when I've gotten too much stared into the abyss of evil too long, I go off and I do a music film or a pop culture film, Metallica, Tony Robbins, those all fall into that bucket. But generally speaking, I think I've been pretty consistent as a filmmaker and in the themes and ideas that I've explored. So I'm fascinated by the fact that I used to get small audiences and great reviews. Now I get huge audiences, huge, and shitty reviews. What is it? Is it that I, as a filmmaker, have changed, or has sensibilities changed? I think it's the latter. And I think that's part of the problem with, the attack on true crime, some of which is legit. But people like to, we live in a society where we like to paint everybody with one broad stroke. And so true crime comes in all shapes and sizes. There's really irresponsible, bad true crime that is nothing but wallowing in the tragedy of others in a salacious manner. And then there's responsible true crime, which I believe I do. I don't take on a story unless I think I have some social justice message or some, the Paradise Lost series, obvious wrongful conviction. But, I've taken, Killing Richard Glossop, which I did for ID. There's a guy on Oklahoma's death row who is still on Oklahoma's death row who I think is innocent. My show Wrong Man on Starz, obviously. So obviously wrongful conviction has taken up a lot of my time, but lots of aspects of the criminal justice system have been my area. So to call me a true crime, filmmaker, and to paint me with that broad, I got an email from a UK writer who said, I'd like to interview you about the trend of using women as entertainment in, the murder of women as entertainment, and what do you think of that? Okay, I think the use of murder of women as entertainment is a horrible thing, and anyone who does it ought to be ashamed of themselves. But do you think you have an agenda in that question there? And you're
seriously,
and you're
what are you doing with this thing is the opposite of that. It's showing
to paint me with a broad brush. And sure enough, and then I checked, and her review of my film of the show was terrible. Totally misunderstood the point. And again, I don't mind if people don't like my stuff. That's I've been a polarizing filmmaker, review-wise and critic-wise, for a while. But if you're going to hate it for the right reasons. At least that's the thing that is lacking, I think, in criticism. I know we weren't probably supposed to be talking about all this stuff, but you wound me up, and here it is.
No, man, I love it. I want to hear it because I feel you.
Well, on the most basic level, we live in this clickbait society where everyone's trying to drive people to their site. But what's the most outrageous headline? How can I go against the trend of something? How can I get that attention? Although I'm doing the same thing by painting everyone with a broad brush. So I don't think some people could legitimately be offended by true crime, by my work, by, not like it. But I think what criticism lacks is, it may not be how you would make the film. It may not be how you would tell the story, which, but if you're going to judge somebody's work, especially you spend 2 to 3 years making something. My belief is anything that's out there is a miracle to get done. It's so hard to make shit. People don't quite understand how hard it is to make shit. Yeah. And then somebody spends 2 hours with it, 3 hours, 90 minutes, a half hour of typing at the keyboard where they just rip it to shreds, and destroy somebody's. It's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And I think to really, truly be a critic in the classic sense of the word, a Pauline Kael, a Vincent Canby, you have to have some empathy and understanding what is the intention of the filmmaker. And even if you don't think that, even if you think the filmmaker failed to achieve his intention, and talk about the craft and what didn't quite work and the rubbery performances, or in the case of scripted or whatever, but this almost just level of vitriol that gets spewed, and a total misunderstanding or inability, or not even a desire to understand what the filmmaker had in mind, it just boggles my mind.
I think it's a little bit sophisticated for some people too. They look at it and they think on the surface it's a true crime story about this victim, and that's all they see of it. They don't look deeper into what you were saying in that framework, because you framed it around a story. It's basically not a story about a crime. It's a story about what happens around the crime. And the crime is certainly part of it, and it's a mystery, and it's solved, but you don't it's not about her. To me,
it's more like the catalyst.
Well, no, it is about her, but it's not a crime. I mean, that's the thing.
Right.
That's what's so fun. That's fun.
That's kind of, I was trying to, make a larger comment about our obsessions, with the genre.
Yeah.
It is more popular than ever before, and people can't seem to get enough of it. And a lot of irresponsible true crime is being done. So in a way, it's kind of a comment on that, comment on this phenomenon of web sleuthing, which relates to you guys in a really fascinating way. And I often give this over the last week, I've given you guys as the positive example of a negative trend.
We had rules. That was one thing we set early on. We had this list of rules where we were like, we're never going to point a finger at anyone. We're never going to speculate publicly about who we thought did it. No conspiracy theories. And we're never going to paint ourselves as experts. We're never going to say that we're trying to solve the crime. And we talked about that right when we started getting involved. We were like, if we're going to do this, we started getting some attention.
Yeah.
And we were like, here's some things we really have to make sure we stand by.
Yeah, that's smart. And I didn't even realize that. That's the first time you ever told me that. But it's apparent in what was how you guys did your thing. But I mean, basically the show is a cautionary tale about jumping to conclusions, because, really this is what it's about for me, why I feel like, if you're going to take a story, somebody's tragedy like Elisa Lam, or any true crime story, I feel it's incumbent upon the maker, the storyteller, to have some larger social justice reason or some larger social commentary to tell the story. Otherwise, don't tell it, because for the person, for the average viewer, it's just another story on TV to consume. But for the person who the story is about and their family, it's obviously the worst moment in their life. And don't tell that story unless you can add some layer to it. And that's getting back to my original rant. It's like the reviews were like, totally almost on purpose, not trying to see the larger issue.
Yeah.
It's trying to portray, or maybe I failed as a director to put it out there, but I think enough people just have told me they get it, that it just makes it hard for me to believe that reviewers don't get it. But, again, they don't have to like it, but at least understand the intent before you rip somebody to shreds.
I think a lot of it is those aggregate movie review websites like Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. It's about like, how do I stand out as a reviewer? I get up to Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic. How do I stay there? Well, I be a contrarian reviewer. So a lot of times I think it's like, hey, I want to give this a terrible review because everybody's giving a good review. So part of it is that, I think.
Yeah. But and what people refuse to see in the reviews, but literally I know millions of people are seeing it because I'm seeing it my way because they're telling me, and and you can see in the comments in social media are like 9 out of 10 are largely positive. The whole point is that we live in this post-truth era.
Yeah.
We've seen it in politics, obviously. We have half the country, in fantasy land, about stuff. We live in a world worse than ever before where, whoever seems to tell the best narrative is the purveyor of truth, and that's something I've been concerned with throughout my career as a storyteller in nonfiction, as somebody who has applied fiction filmmaking techniques in documentary. Not the only one, but Brothers Keeper is given a lot of credit for having been very aware of, dramatic structure and a certain cinematic shooting style, which is now very commonplace in documentaries. Not taking credit for it. I'm just, we're among the early pioneers and in the subjectivity of documentary. So the nature of truth is something that's always been, of concern with me. And of course, then you get to wrongful conviction, and wrongful conviction is the ultimate in the price you pay for two competing narratives, because two very compelling stories are presented to a jury. And if the wrong one is believed, a guy like Damien goes to death row. But I never could have imagined that we would live in the world that we've just come out of, or that we're still in. But I mean, the presidential campaign.
Yeah.
Where we really believe, people believe there just seems to be no objective reality for some people. And so the whole point of the dissection of the Elisa Lam through the Cecil window or lens is this is a story that's been told as a ghost story, a paranormal, a haunting. And to me, that trivializes, talk about disrespect to the victim, which people often accuse true crime of doing. To me, the most disrespectful thing you could do to Elisa Lam is to dismiss her story as a ghost story. It two-dimensionalizes her, it trivializes her. So I wanted to, for the first season of the show called Crime Scene, where we go to a place that is infamous for crime, I wanted to kind of turn it on its head and actually show there was no crime at all at the end, but to tell the story of the dangers of jumping to conclusions based on circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
Because as you guys know, every great murder has got murder case has got an abundance of circumstantial facts that sound weird and coincidental, but without corroborating evidence, that's what leads to wrongful convictions.
We were batting away a lot of John Mark Byers accusers, because that was in parallels to this film, there was a lot of web sleuthing in the early days where they were going after John Mark Byers. And we were always like, don't point the fingers. We don't know. He's innocent until proven guilty. We're trying to go there.
Yeah.
He didn't help his case by,
we were always saying we're not going to do what they did to Damien and Jason and Jesse. We don't want to do that.
And so, so it's hard to say all cyber sleuthing and all web sleuths are bad. I think the web sleuths in my show had good intent. Obviously, the cyberbullying of Morbid was not a good thing, although none of the web sleuths in the show actually were involved in the cyberbullying. And interestingly, in a show that is very much about, on a larger level, the dangers of cyberbullying and the dangers of jumping to false conclusions based on circumstantial evidence, sadly, there's a bunch of people cyberbullying the people in our show.
Yeah.
Oh my
God.
Amy Price, who's the manager, who is a delightful person who, did her best and tried to make a go of that place. And, she's being harassed horrifically.
See, I don't understand. I thought she was amazing. Like, she stood out to me. I thought she was
a small group of people who want to harass her, believe in the conspiracy theory still, think the hotel is covering things up, and they're going after her.
Yeah.
Same thing with the web sleuths. They're all being harassed for what they did to Morbid. And Morbid's a great character, and I hate to talk about people's character.
Well, he is a character.
Yeah. He's a great character in the show.
Probably fine with being called a great character.
And people are cyberbullying. So it's mind-boggling. We live in very strange times where people put their opinions out there in such a mean way. I just don't get it. But
it's a real mob mentality. You just hear, you can see the pitchforks coming out, and they all just kind of jump on, and it's so horrifying to see it. And it makes me sad about the manager of the place, because one of the things I really liked, I don't know if this is going to be an ongoing theme through the series, is that I love how it was almost a depiction of the place, the Cecil Hotel.
Yeah, very much.
The mystery. I loved that.
The character, yeah.
And I love that it was like it ignited my interest in Skid Row again, because you kind of sort of forget about it because it's a part of LA. And when you showed it in that context of like how long Skid Row's been around and how detrimental it's been to the downtown and what's going on down there, I was like, what is going on with Skid Row? Why is this? So I started getting involved in it again, looking, trying to find out what our government's doing about it, what's happening, because that's a crime in and of itself, is letting that exist, and how bad it is for women. And it was really powerful on that level too, just knowing the place, and how far the Cecil, fell and it's from its former glory. It was all very sad, and I loved her affection for the hotel.
Yeah, was really nice. She hadn't talked to anybody in the past. She trusted our project because she knew we weren't going to dismiss it as a ghost story. And I thought she is incredibly sympathetic in the show, and so for her to be attacked, it's just boggles my mind.
Yeah,
you just almost have to go back and believe. Who are these people? Who are like that? I feel like those people are the ones that it's not even about the case or the show. It's more about the problems with their own lives, and so they feel like they have to lash out at people. Who are
they're the vocal mob who go type. Yeah. It's just
like my job is done here.
But then there's.
But I've used you guys as a positive example. That's why you can't paint everything with a broad brush. I assume your listeners know your role, right? Do we need to repeat all that?
We probably should repeat, because I don't know how many people listen to the entire thing as a narrative. But this is probably one of the only times you're interviewed by people who are actually in your movies.
But we don't mention it every time, so it doesn't come up very often.
You guys saw Kathy in particular. You saw when before HBO. I think it was after Sundance, but before HBO put it on TV.
Mm-hmm.
You were tasked with doing the poster for the original Paradise Lost. Couldn't believe what you saw with your screener that you were just supposed to watch to.
I passed it around
to get the creative juices flowing for the poster design, but then you gave it to Burk and Grove, and you all just went nuts over the film and decided, a real grave injustice had been done. Started the West Memphis Three support group website at a time, I call it, social media 1.0. There was no social media. It was just the internet for the first time was really being used for like-minded people finding each other on the internet, which has now become such an amazing thing.
There's a lot of work back then.
For better and worse, it's an amazing thing that people of like-minded interests can find each other on the internet. But back then it was, a bigger deal, and you started this website and loaded it up with information, and it attracted. And that's what I always say, like the Paradise Lost films get a lot of credit for the liberation of the West Memphis Three. And not to be falsely humble or anything. I mean, they deserve some of that credit, but so do you guys. Because I don't think, like, if the film had come out 2 years earlier or whatever, and the internet just wasn't coming into being, or you guys didn't take an interest, I don't think it's that level of support that generated, tens of thousands of people like finding each other, saying we're going to do something about this stranger. That's what got them out of prison. Then the celebrities came and all that stuff and whatever. But the bottom line is that initial website and your activities led to like all sorts of normal people from all walks of life going down to Arkansas and protesting on their 2 weeks of vacation. I mean, look, I marveled at that dedication, because like, let's face it, it's great that we made a good film, and it's great that the films got them out. And, I don't think it's that special. I get paid to be a filmmaker. That's my job. But for like a poster designer or a banker, there was that one dude, who was that guy who was somewhat heavyset guy who was a banker? Do you remember him? Who was part of the group early on, like JP Morgan banker or something.
Was that freezer door? Bill.
Yeah,
I call him freezer door.
Yeah. Anyway,
handle.
Anyway, the fact that people who had other jobs other than telling stories,
oh yeah,
became so committed to these strangers in Arkansas. That to me is special. So and so you can't say all internet-based sleuthing is a bad thing, but it's when it's combined with that judgmentalness, that vindictiveness, that meanness, that it's like, dude, it's just like, it's not
that existed with the West Memphis Three. There were certainly vindictive, nasty people, usually on the other side of our camp, but we had a lot of there was a lot of nastiness going on back then that would have, if Facebook had existed or Twitter or whatever, it would have been outrageous. But as it was, we had before Facebook and all that, before social media was a thing, I guess. And we had discussion rooms, like chat rooms and things like that. And there were people who would show up and try to hurt people, try to get people, fired from their jobs and people called my mom and told her that I was dying of AIDS and, all these horrible things.
Really?
My mom,
weird.
Oh yeah. Calling my poor mom and telling her all these horrible things. And luckily, my mom was like, I don't understand what they're talking about.
Yeah. Web sleuthers. Awesome.
But yeah, anytime you get a whole bunch of people together and they can all say whatever they want, hiding,
But it's an interesting thing too, because when we started this, we didn't know there would be a Paradise Lost 2. We were just, doing our form of protest and, raising awareness of the case. That's all we thought we were going to do. And then when you and Bruce came and, talked to us and wanted us to be part of a sequel, because you wanted to show this growing interest in the case and how it has, started with the internet, then, that was the next step into that. But I think people sort of forget that we didn't go into it knowing that. And then to be part of it is a sort of surreal experience, because you don't know what's going to happen after it comes out. I think the web sleuths in, Cecil Hotel, I'm sure if we talked to them, we'd have a lot of similarities in how it felt to be part of the filmmaking process and, having all that brought out, in a big way, and they're probably going to be hearing about it for a long time, because every time someone sees it, there's a new wave of like interest that all of a sudden people pile in. And we still get people saying, I know John Mark Byers did it. And we're like, keep watching.
Did you notice he said when my wife was murdered? It's like we hear that constantly.
Still hear it.
And, we didn't want to do it. I remember when you guys asked us, we were like, I don't want this to be about us, and we're like from Hollywood and LA people, and this is Arkansas's business and all that. But you guys said, I think you said that you guys would be the voice of the people watching, the viewer's voice.
Yeah.
And we thought about it and we're like, it it needs that. It needs somebody speaking up on the other side of the conviction, the people who are saying they're guilty and they're devil worshipers and all that. They need somebody to cut through that. And I guess maybe that's us. I don't know.
Yeah.
It also speaks to your filmmaking.
I mean, I didn't want to do a Paradise Lost 2 either or 3. I thought Paradise Lost 1 was going to bust the jail doors wide open, and
we did too.
And I mean, it was so good and so powerful, and people loved it, but it just couldn't sway the local. In fact, I remember the governor of Arkansas, or maybe it was the attorney general, somebody's website, whether it was the attorney general or the governor, like when HBO broadcasted, they put up some disclaimer saying it's a work of fiction by an entertainment company.
Right.
Oh yeah, they love that.
Don't pay any attention to it. And the needle really didn't move down there until the local press, like a decade and a half later, started singing the other, the real song, and then the local politicians all of a sudden became worried for their jobs. I didn't want to do. I mean, I think actually, it's fascinating to me that it took so long. We made 3 films, because I thought the first film was going to do for the West Memphis Three what Errol Morris's Thin Blue Line did for Randall Dale Evans, which had an immediate impact on that case, and it just took too long, and we just felt like, I know this sounds like I'm being falsely humble or whatever, but this is true. If it was just the film as a film really hit a note with people. I can't tell you how many younger filmmakers have said Paradise Lost is the movie that made them want to go into filmmaking or whatever. It's taught in law schools. It really hit a note with people, but it never migrated off the entertainment page onto like the news page. Again, this is early days of the internet, so we could say those things back then, but but it was a bit of a mind trip to be patted on the back for this great work of art, to be giving your acceptance speeches at award shows, but no, the guy is still on death row and being brutalized by guards, and he's now 3 years into his death row sentence, and you're giving me this award, which is nice. We all creative artists like to be validated, but it just felt like, well, wait a second, this film has done nothing to move the needle, so I guess we have to make another one.
Well, I remember telling you that I really loved that movie. It changed my life, obviously, but I just have always hated the ending. I thought you didn't get they should get out at the end of the first film, right? Yeah. And that the ending of it was just so harrowing, and I think that's what haunts people, is the fact that it's like, wait a minute, how could it end like that? Yeah,
well, it was also obvious, and you made it's a tribute to your filmmaking, not to be all but you really cared about these people that we didn't know, and that's why we all got involved. And then to find out, I think when I saw it was a couple of years after they were convicted, that they were still in jail.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, how could they still? This is so obvious. And I can't believe that it took 15 years past that point. I mean, I can't believe we stayed involved for 15 years on this. We didn't intend it. It just happened, and you just can't turn your back on it. You just can't walk away. So,
well, when we first saw the film, we were like, okay, this happened a little while ago. I'm sure they're out by now, So that was one of the reasons I was calling around. I started calling the prisons and trying to get in touch with attorneys and whoever else I could find, just to say, are they still locked up? Yeah. And then we went out there and visited them. And I remember talking to Damien and Jason and Jessie and saying, I'm sure you guys have a whole lot of advocates, right? People working, your attorneys. And when was the last time you spoke to your attorney? And are they still working to get you out? Because obviously you need to get out. And they all said, no, nobody. Like, when was the last time you saw your attorney? It's like the day I got sentenced. It was just so nothing. Bad. It was nothing. And then I think Kathy and Grove and I looked at each other and we're like, shit.
We didn't know what we were doing. We just had to do something. So we just started winging it. And
now they're our friends. Now you can't just say, okay, well, that sucks. Bye.
I mean, that's the good thing about Cecil Hotels. It has an ending. And what I liked about it is that it had an ending that was actually almost sadder than a crime. Like the whole thing was, and it sort of pointed out, how we all misunderstand and still stigmatize mental illness. And
absolutely.
That was a good point. I think the film also made, in that it was a little bit more than just like who killed her. It was a way more than that.
No, exactly. That's the thing. It's again, I keep harping on this just because just before this, I read another snarky review. It's like,
oh, Joe, don't
read them.
I really need to learn not to read the review. It's just mind-boggling to me. But the whole point was to dissect the thing, and to show, to raise certain issues, not just to, like I read one review. Oh, he's giving so much credibility to the web sleuths and letting them talk their conspiracy theory. Well, that's kind of the point. It's a well-known story that's been presented a certain way. We're now going to unpack it, show what's real, and talk about the dangers of jumping to conclusions based on pure circumstantial evidence, or worse, no just bizarre theories.
It's like the Nancy Grace thing.
And the case is loaded with strange occurrences, that even make me scratch my head. But that's just demonstrative of the fact that you can't convict somebody, based on strange synchronicities. I mean, like that Lam Elisa test is just mind-boggling.
That still blows my mind.
It still blows my mind, but it's just a coincidence,
or the last bookstore is web address or something, or zip code was the same as Burnaby, British Columbia,
where she's buried. And
really trippy.
The plot to Dark Water, it just could be reduced to her story if you wanted it to look at it that way. So these things exist, but you can't dismiss, you need corroborating evidence,
But see, that's a good point that you talk about all those coincidences or elements of information, because we're in like this, and you've talked about it too just now, about this lack of truth in so much of what's going on in society right now. So we have all these conspiracies like QAnon and all this stuff, and it's all based on little weird things that you were talking about in this case that have no basis, that some people just want to attribute meaning to, because they somehow have to put patterns and things together and solve something big.
It's like, remember with the West Memphis Three, the case number was 666, and there was so much made out of that. It was like,
wasn't that artificially done?
Yes.
On purpose?
Yes.
Yep. It turns out later that they found out that it was that they changed the name to 666.
Incredible. It's incredible. My iPhone, is the most amazing device that I don't know, what is it, 12 years old, 13 years old? I mean, when I was a kid, I couldn't imagine I could pick up a phone and Google something. And I mean,
it can talk to you.
It's pretty amazing. We've never been more connected, yet more divided. Yep. We've never had more information literally at our fingertips to anyone who's our age-ish and remembers what it was like before the internet. We've never had more information available to us, and yet the truth has never been more elusive about every fucking thing in society.
What do you think that is? Like, why?
Because
everybody make a movie out of it, Joe.
I wish I was smart enough. It's deeply disturbing. I mean, there was,
really disturbing.
Without getting political, I think, there's 74 million people who are believing a completely false narrative. That's a lot of people.
Yeah,
it is. And it's sometimes I wonder if it's just like the fact that there's
they
so
think
much
we're believing a
information.
false narrative, I mean,
false narratives are where it's at right now for some reason.
But maybe it's the fact that there is so much information that people get inundated, they're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And they just pick the thing that they like, they pick the one that sounds good to them, the one that blames someone for their own failures. If they're a failure or something, they're like, well, this belief right here lets me blame somebody else for it.
Yeah. So the irony to me for some people saying that he's just rehashing conspiracy theories. The whole point of the show is to dissect them and show why they're false and why those conspiracy theories are dangerous to believe in, and what actually is behind this crime scene, which is the idea of the series, is to each season go to a different place and kind of uncover, have it be more of a forensic exploration of the socio and economic factors that lead to a crime scene. It meticulously tells the truth of a situation, and it's dismissed by some as just rehashing conspiracy theories. No, we're showing why we're giving the viewer kind of the experience of the story unfolding the way it unfolded for the web sleuths, and then showing what really happened, and not pretending it was some spooky ghost story or haunting.
And also what it is about the conspiracy theories that are so attractive. And I think it's just that thing of excitement of like the people that you show who go to the hotel and they're like, wow, this is the elevator that she was in, and this is it's almost like they're fans of a film, and they're on the set of this film that they watched or something. And it's almost, I mean, it's like I guess the idea is that they're there trying to get a feeling for what may have happened and put themselves in the place, and maybe they'll see some detail that can add something to their ideas about what really happened. But ultimately it's almost like there's an attraction that people have to crime stories, and the fact that after this, I believe a friend of mine was telling me, who lives downtown, he was saying that since the film came out, he's seeing people standing in front of the Cecil, selfies, and
no, actually I've heard, I mean, this the first weekend this has done so well. Like, it's crazy how popular it was, like right out of the gate. And I was told by some friends who are connected to the hotel that it was mobbed that first weekend.
Wow.
Which is kind of funny, I guess. But
that makes you think.
Do you think true crime is more popular than ever, or do you think it's always been popular?
I think people love mysteries, and I think true crime is sort of tapping into that and making the stakes higher because it's real. I like I'm kind of attracted to the idea. I mean, I always like your films because they kind of elevate the genre, but I love the mystery aspect, and that's why I liked the mystery unfolding slowly. Like, we're all waiting for this autopsy report. Like, oh my God, it was so suspenseful, waiting, and you feel like now the answer is coming, and then it was like, well, it was inconclusive. It's like, duh. And then you see the conspiracies, coming to life around the lack of information, So I think the mystery is a big part of it, and we've always had mysteries, and I think that's part of it. But I don't understand the huge explosion that true crime is having right now.
I'm torn about whether it's bigger or not. Versus, I think people have always been fascinated. The narrative is like, I was one of the pioneers of true crime, and now it's exploding. And what do you think of what you've wrought? Like,
you did this.
Those are the kind of questions I get sometimes. It's like, I don't know. I think true crime existed before me. Like Truman Capote's In Cold Blood was another milestone in the genre. But people have always been interested in crime. First of all, crime is part of who we are. Like, you can't stick crime, criminality, crossing that line. Whether it's for, avarice or hate or love, or whether it's out of cowardice, like, what would I do in Nazi Germany? Would I have protected people, or would I have looked the other way? I mean, just crime and it's just who we are. So like, it's obviously a branch of storytelling that's going to be popular. People bought, in the public, when hangings were public, in the 19th century, you could buy tickets to the public hanging and souvenir booklets. So
big entertainment.
It's always been a form of entertainment. And so if it exists, you have to do it responsibly. I think there's a lot of irresponsible versions of this. But is it more popular, or is just the documentary form more popular? And it's just,
that's true.
There's
a lot of outlets for it now. There's a lot of
Who do you think
you find them?
I couldn't, when I first started. If you didn't sell your documentary to HBO or PBS, you weren't making a documentary unless you were paying for yourself. There was no such thing as unscripted series. The MTV's Real World was right around the corner, but even that took a while for there to be this huge tradition now, which is largely a streaming phenomenon of all these series. But so I question whether the form is more popular. Sorry, whether the true crime is more popular, just the documentary form. Like I've never been busier. I've never had more opportunity, and I've never seen our business be more mainstream in the entertainment business. Even exacerbated now by the pandemic because of the ascendancy of the streamers, and nonfiction is just easier to produce from a technical standpoint.
Right.
And the story is basically already out there, written somewhere, I guess.
So,
who do you think are some of the filmmakers that are handling it the right way? Can you think of any off the top of your head?
I can't talk about other filmmakers.
But nice things.
Nice things.
You don't have to talk about it.
No, I thought Making a Murderer was outstanding. I thought Serial obviously was outstanding. I mean, it's raising issues of people who were potentially wrongfully convicted.
Mm-hmm.
In the serial killer front, those I have a higher standard for. Although Bundy was was criticized, like, why give a killer a platform? And I actually understand that argument, but for me, doing the 2 Bundy projects, before I embarked, it was actually a coincidence. I ended up doing a scripted and unscripted. It sounds like some grand master plan, but without boring the listener too much, it's for another podcast. Or I think actually on the Bundy podcast we talked about this, but how it became both projects more or less at the same time was just a bunch of coincidence that I wasn't intending. Nonetheless, before I started those projects, I asked my daughters, who were college age, very smart women going to very fine institutions, do you know who Ted Bundy is? Neither one of them knew. I said, ask your friends. And, for the most part, people only vaguely knew he was a serial killer, but many people didn't even know who he was. And I felt like, particularly in this online environment of catfishing and people pretending to be one thing when they're another, and I just felt like doing the Bundy films for a younger generation, hence choosing Zac Efron to be, I was obviously trying to appeal to a certain demographic, basically my daughter's demographic, because I think the lessons of Bundy can't be, overstated or repeated enough. That just because somebody, looks and sounds a certain way, somebody is charming and attractive, it doesn't mean you should trust them, and I think that's the lesson I wanted my daughters to have. So even with Bundy, and the complaint that I was giving a serial killer a platform was really had, in my mind, social commentary, because why is it that Bundy got away with it for so long? Because he was white and charming and good looking.
Yep, exactly.
He was allowed to turn that Florida courtroom into a circus. But if it was a person of color, he would have been in an orange jumpsuit and chains throughout the entire proceeding, and he wouldn't have been allowed to represent himself. So I think because he was white, charming, and good looking, he was given a pass,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think people will think serial killers will look like monsters, and they'll know them when they see them.
Exactly.
And I think it's important that people know that they don't necessarily look like monsters, and you always should be careful.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, as I've learned over the decades and, spending a lot of time in this world, the people you least expect and most often trust are the ones who are generally the, evil doers.
And the ones who look like your friend Morbid, are the ones that you have to be afraid of the least, I think.
Exactly. He's a sweetheart. I mean, yeah.
No, he did not seem scary in his interview at all. He just
Yeah,
seemed
no.
like, I don't think people understood the idea of the performance he was actually doing. And like you said, was he a little obvious?
And the idea that people could see him as a performer on his videos, his music and everything, and his videos, and think, oh, he's actually really like that. He really is an evil, that to me is shocking that people believe that, it's that weird line between fiction and reality that some people have they have a hard time separating it,
Yeah, totally.
So how do you land on the stories you want to tell? Like, how did you decide on the Cecil Hotel, Elisa Lam project? How do they come across your desk?
Different things come to me different ways, and I'm pitched a lot of stuff now, and I have a great development team that, researches our own ideas. If there's an opportunity to, I love blowing up stereotypes and taking people on a journey that they think is going to be one thing and it turns out to be the other. I mean, that's, a bunch of devil worshiping Satanists, well, wait, actually they're innocent, or, Brothers Keeper, these smelly old farm brothers, God, stay away. No, they're actually the most engaging, warm human beings I've ever spent time with. Or, a lot of people just have a knee-jerk reaction to the Tony Robbins thing, but if you actually drop into that moment, it may not be for everyone, but it was life-changing for me. And I think that movie, if you allow it to affect you and not be judgmental, it can be a positive experience. So I just love, seeing things through a more complex lens. So the stories all have to kind of fit that. And, a journalist named Josh Dean brought me the Elisa Lam story. And we then had the bigger idea. When I say we, it's Radical Media and Imagine Documentaries. This was a co-production, but we had the bigger idea of, okay, let's first of all, not just tell the story that's been told before. Let's really pull it apart and look at how all these conspiracy theories are actually not true. And also to focus on a place instead of just telling that story. Let's have this ongoing series where we go to a place that's infamous for crime and try to understand how the crime or the perception of the crime, in the case of Elisa Lam, could have come to be. So
that's a great idea.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we just wanted to, I don't know, freshen up the genre a little bit, or so it's just. I don't know. It's just, it just spoke to me as a way of, and then of course you have an idea and different makers can do the idea different ways. But for me, I like literally, I spent all of last year just aghast at where we are with regard to people's grip on reality.
Yeah. It's
From
disturbing.
Climate change to that horrendous presidency we've been through. For anybody to think that guy is worth voting for,
it's shocking.
And to watch January 6th, when you see that insurrection, you just shake your head and
and obvious. And I'm not saying all those people are dumb or wrong or blind or whatever. Maybe we're all deluded, and and we have some different perspective that's equally not rooted in reality. That is a possibility. Like, I just don't want to say 74 million people are like wacky. That's why, because you can't say. And I went to a college reunion 3 years ago, and I'm sitting at a table, coincidentally, it was a buffet, and I just happened to sit down, my wife and I just happened to sit down with some people that I might not have sat down with 35 years ago, one way or the other. Meaning, I just sat down, and it became very clear that these doctors, lawyers, bankers, like, were pro-Trump, and they're saying things like, yeah, he may say things this or that, but we like his policies. Or just like, I don't understand that. I don't understand how you can care about the planet and your fellow human being and be down for any of that. And I'm sure, but again, I don't want to dismiss 74 million people or whatever the number is, as being having bad intentions or whatever. And so anyway, all of last year, I was just deeply perplexed and troubled by the increasing inability for there to be an objective reality. And look, the left is as bad as the right. I mean, MSNBC and CNN started and still are devolved so deep into opinion journalism that I don't think the left is much better than the right with regard.
A little better
in terms of what they believe in. It's a little better in terms of what they believe in, but not in crossing that line.
No, the execution of it isn't great, but it's a little more truth-based.
Objective reality, and not giving your opinion.
Yeah, true.
I just find it troubling. So I forgot what my point was. Okay, what ideas do you like? So Elisa Lam came to me as a subject at a time where I was deeply perplexed about and disturbed about the nature of truth in our society. you know, and so I think the infusion of that theme into this show I might not have executed it that way 5 years ago, or I might have even have passed on it 5 years ago because, oh yeah, it's been done before, and I don't know, doesn't seem like. But the idea that I'm going to pick apart all the conspiracy theory and demonstrate how people just get on these bandwagons to the point where they're so sure they're going to attack somebody and bully somebody online who has nothing to do with it and destroy somebody's life without any proof. Again, nobody in the show who I interviewed or who we interviewed for the show, none of those web sleuths were responsible for Morbid. But there were people out there attacking the guy. And so, you know, and you know, these guys, the web sleuths in our show all were extremely well intentioned and really cared, and you know, they're good people. So I don't want any negative criticism to go towards them. But I think having been so you know, just disturbed by where reality is heading, this idea just like, oh, I can, under the guise of an entertainment show, you know, because you still have to deliver the cliffhangers and end episode 1 at the right moment so they come back to episode 2. There's still like filmmaking, like storytelling, whether you're telling any story that has to come into play. But to do that in this way, with this story at this time, you know, it has a lot to do with how I choose a subject.
And I thought it was really profound when the web sleuths who were just as involved in the conspiracies and trying to solve things, their realization at the end and seeing them so gracefully, you know, accept the facts.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was a really important thing to show that you should not hang on to a point of view beyond all reason, that at some point you have to stop and go, oh gosh, okay, this is it. We were wrong. This is what the story is. That was really profound, I think, and a good point to make.
Cool.
It's a difference between rational and irrational. You know, it's like, you know, if you lock yourself in to an opinion, even in the face of all kinds of evidence to the contrary, that means you're irrational, you know?
Yeah.
And one thing, talking about reality television, I think there's you know, and talking about the way things are now, post-truth or whatever we call it, reality television in a way is a thing that people believe is reality. And I know some people have done days on reality TV, and I know people who've worked on it, and it's not really reality TV. It's not roll the camera and see what happens, because no producer would invest in a season of an episodic show where something might happen. You know, it's like they're going to make sure something happens. They're going to make sure there's a scandal or a backstabbing or a betrayal or an unexpected twist in the 8th episode. You know, it's outlined. It may not be, they can claim that it's not scripted because they may not have a conventional script, but there's definitely there's characters that are, okay, you're going to be the guy that does this, and you're going to do this, and this is going to happen in episode 11. We're going to have the reveal of the backstabbing, you know, and it's all plotted out like that. I mean, you know, Grove, in fact, played a character on The Apprentice.
Really?
Yeah. And so did I, actually. I played his assistant in an episode of The Apprentice, and it was very.
This is all your fault.
Yeah, I contributed. Yeah, I'm sorry, but
I'm not a big reality TV fan. I don't consider I do reality TV at all.
I don't like that.
It's the opposite.
No, it's not.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. It's entertainment, and therefore there's a lot of money involved in it, and therefore nobody's gonna, you know, you're not gonna get money from anybody by telling them, look, I want to make a reality show where we go into a situation where we have a woman and a bunch of guys, and they all want to go out with her, and it's just a bunch of people that sort of hang out and they go on dates and stuff. It's like,
pitch it, Burk.
No, you know. But if you pitch it in terms of, well, this guy is going to turn out to be secretly having an affair with her sister, and then you know, that's the way you're going to get your funding, you know.
So
you can't just pitch an idea of maybe it'll happen. Yeah, maybe we'll have to throw the whole season in the trash because nobody did anything interesting.
So, Joe, do you have any projects coming up that you can talk about?
I do. I have another show, of course. I'm bracing for the reaction.
Don't read them. Yeah, don't do it.
Bracing for it. But I actually did a show for Starz that's premiering at South by Southwest about Sam Little, America's most prolific serial killer.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm glad you're doing that because I had not really heard of him much either, and I know he just died, I guess. And
Yeah.
I want someone who has, some real investment in doing this properly to break this case to the general public.
Well, again, I was reluctant to take on another serial killer story because I've done quite a few, and I'm a little murdered out.
Right.
So I was reluctant to take on, another serial killer project, but this one is the absolute epitome. There will be no other story to make your jaw drop at the absolute, I don't want to say misogyny because that's a loaded word, but there is a built-in bias against and race. I'll say racism.
Mm-hmm.
There is a built-in racism and a bias against, marginalized people and sex workers and people with mental health problems. There is such baked-in bias that enabled this guy to kill with impunity for 93 people over 4 decades.
Insane.
I mean, it's just, so the story has to be told, and you have to give the killer a platform to understand the horror of what that kind of system is that allowed this guy to, just not be apprehended. And we're telling it, it's a bunch of powerful women who brought him down finally.
That's great.
And so it's that kind of a story. And, it talks about the relationship that this author named Jillian Lauren had with Sam to help get confessions and details out of him that she shared with the FBI and Texas Rangers, which allowed cold cases to be solved. Sadly, there's like lots of bodies dumped all across the country for decades of people where, it's women, often sex workers, and just nobody seems to do anything about it. And through the work of, Jillian and the law enforcement, finally now women working with the serial killer to solve some of these Jane Doe cases and identify these victims. So it's more about that. So it's very victim focused, but it also gives the killer a platform, which you're not supposed to do. But I don't know. I think this is an important story about baked in racism and bias for why these kinds of cases never get solved, and somebody goes on for decades. So that's premiere. 2 episodes are premiering at South by Southwest, which is cool, and then it'll go on Starz later.
Great.
Wow, can't wait for that.
Yeah.
I do all the happy family programs.
You and murder. What's up with that?
Well, I get, you're talking about the West Memphis Three stuff, and we've spent so many years so deeply involved with that, with you guys, with your film and being, filmed and being aware of being sort of a part of it. It's like we always used to talk about having seen your first film, and then in the second film, when it came out, it was so weird for us to watch that second film because it was like we had studied that first film and so much, and here we are actually, we stepped into the frame of the camera, and then we sort of became a little bit of a part of it, a part of the story, and that was a weird experience. And one of the things that it did, one of the things it did to me was it made me not interested in true crime anymore as much as I was. Because before that, the reason I got involved in that case because I was fascinated with the true crime, the psychology of it, and trying to figure out what kind of person would do such a thing. How do you think? Where does it come from? And I steer away from true crime now because it hurts too much. Once, and I'm sure you feel this way, you've met families of victims, and you've been around them when they're in anguish and just, I'm sure, you know, everybody, all of us have families, and you can't help but imagine how that would feel. And every time I watch a true crime, I can't pull myself away from the feeling of how this tears people up and tears families apart and ruins lives of the people who are, you know, left behind by these horrible acts. And I think I'm kind of ruined for it, you know?
Yeah. Well,
I don't know how you keep going with that. It's got to be hard to focus.
You know, I don't want to act like I'm like, you know, like it's such a burden and, you know, aren't I wonderful or whatever, you know. I make a living, a very nice living, telling these kinds of stories, you know, and I appreciate that. You know, but I definitely pick and choose my stories. If something is just, as I said at the outset, if something is just wallowing in the misery of somebody's tragedy, and the whole point of the show is just rubbernecking,
right?
You know, because, you know, we can't help but look at the wreck across the street or on the other side of the highway. If it's just that, who cares? It's like there's enough misery in the world. But having been around the anguish and misery of families who have gone through the worst thing imaginable, you know, it motivates me to want to try to minimize those events as best I can. Obviously, crime isn't going away, but if I can, you know, use my storytelling abilities to, you know, tell a cautionary tale about jumping to conclusions like in Cecil, or, you know, shine a light on this horrific Sam Little to make people realize in law enforcement that, you know, just because you're a sex worker or a drug addict doesn't mean you don't deserve the protection of the police. You know, then I feel good about what I'm doing, and it motivates me, you know. But it's definitely there is a compartmentalization that I've learned that I need to survive, you know, like I remember, I think I've told you this story before, but maybe not, but like, you know, the use of the police the police crime scene footage in Paradise Lost, at the beginning of Paradise Lost, that was a very discussed and considered decision, and somewhat groundbreaking. Some may call it something else and view it negatively, but that was the most graphic thing that had been put on television, I would venture to say, in a crime show at the time. And we talked a lot about it, how much footage to use, how much of the horrible autopsy photos, which I'm sure you guys have seen, and what happened to these kids was horrendous. You know, the opening police video of coming upon the bodies and removing them. Bruce and I talked a lot about how much to use it, and it was very controversial and criticized at the time. You know, we felt it was very important you have to bring people into the story to understand how is it that a whole community could have this rush to judgment and just believe because somebody listens to Metallica lyrics and reads Stephen King books, because there was no forensic evidence presented and no blood at the crime scene and all the stuff you guys know. How is it that a community could be so scared that they had to solve the crime that they could believe these ghost stories? And I felt, and Bruce felt, that, you know, you got to show people just how horrible the crime was, which is why we did that footage. But I remember there was a couple of weeks where, because this was this was, you know, in the days of sitting over a Steenbeck and working on 60mm work print, and there was no such thing as digital editing. Well, it was just starting to happen, but we hadn't switched yet. We were still editing on film.
Wow.
And, you know, I remember, you know, you take these strips of the police crime scene footage, and every edit takes 10 times as long. You're physically splicing. And so, you know, we spent like a week just looking at the most horrific images of, you know, autopsy photos and police crime scene footage, and, you know, really disturbing stuff. And I had an 18-month-old daughter in a crib at home. And I remember driving home one day with these images on my mind and being a young first-time father and going to my daughter's nursery and picking up my kid and just like flashing upon these horrible images because I had stared into the abyss of evil while holding my, what should have been a precious, and was obviously for the most part a precious time, but I resented the project.
Yeah.
Because it had robbed me of my fatherly innocence, because nobody with a young kid at home should look at the shit that we had to look at to make that film. So it deeply impacted me back then, but now over the years, I've just learned to compartmentalize, and which is why the choice of project's important. It's why I think Cecil Hotel is the last thing, is not gratuitous, Those who think it's just a gratuitous recounting of a spooky crime are missing the point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's why when I take on a story, I feel like there's got to be a larger social justice, there's got to be some reason to tell the story other than just rubbernecking,
Well, it's an incredibly well told story.
Yes.
The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, you should. It's excellent.
Cool.
And check out Joe's other movies too.
Yes.
Yeah, he's made a few other films as well.
There's a couple other ones that are good.
Somehow I keep working. I don't know what the deal is.
You're good at it, I think.
You keep making really good things. That's the thing.
I thought they'd be putting me out to pasture by now.
No, you have to keep making good things.
I've been doing it since I was 28. It's pretty incredible.
That's amazing. And you still love it.
And I still love it.
Still love it.
Imagine that people say, when are you going to retire? It's like, retire from what?
Never.
I mean, this is a lifestyle. So
yeah.
Well, maybe we can have you out again when the Starz, when the Sam Little show starts up.
That would be great.
That'd be great to talk about that. That's a whole other thing to talk about.
It's incredible. It's a shocking story. I mean, the horsemen had him in their hands. Knew he was a serial killer at times, and we're like, well, we can't convict him, and off he went.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, well, these women who nobody cares. It's like, no, people care.
I mean, basically, yeah. I mean,
well, thanks so much for spending so much time of your. We got to see the sun go down.
It's dark in
your windows out there.
Very dark back there now.
I know, right? I know. We're trying stuff.
We still have Los Angeles sunlight coming through the windows.
How is LA these days? Is it,
It's easy to get around.
Yeah.
I love one of the
less traffic is good.
Half hour to get to the west side for me. It's incredible.
I do miss my trips to LA, I have to say.
Yeah.
I need to start traveling again, hopefully.
I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I feel it's coming.
Yeah.
So.
We miss travel so much. Addicted to YouTube travel videos lately. Just
so hopefully next time you're in LA, you'll have time to hook up.
Yeah. That would be great. I would enjoy it.
Thanks,
so
John.
When does this go out?
Probably tomorrow.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And are you guys getting a good audience, or what you're doing?
Yeah. It's growing. We're very happy.
We're gigantic.
How was your Kirby Dick Woody Allen thing?
Oh, we're probably gonna talk to him soon.
Oh, I thought I saw a picture of you guys doing it.
Well, that was for Bleeding Edge. Back. Yeah, that was like a couple years ago. You guys tend to have movies that come out around the same time.
Yeah.
And did I ever tell you that his wife worked on Paradise Lost key art too?
No.
Yeah, I worked with her. That's how I met them.
Kirby's wife worked on
Paradise Lost poster.
Interesting. But I'm confused. I thought I saw a post of you and him recently.
Yeah, we posted an old photo of us with him. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But we are gonna hook up with him. I'm sure he's pretty busy right now. we usually give you guys like about a week to sort of let the dust settle, and then we're gonna go.
And we swoop in.
All right, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go have Mary.
I know.
Yeah.
I wish I had someone making me dinner right now.
All right.
All right. Thanks so much.
Give all our best to your wonderful family, and tell them hey.
And say hi to Grove if you guys.
Yes.
Talk
we do.
And,
we do. My wife says hey.
Tell her hello back. And Burk, I know you're Burk. Sorry.
Burk.
All right.
Burk.
Hey,
okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. See you, Joe.